Please start, sir.
Yes, thank you, dear learner. Today we have health and disorder. We have this topic. We have to discuss health and disorder. And WHO very rightly said, no health without mental health, because mental health is the primary and physical health is secondary. If you know the mentally retarded people, they are very built up physically, but mentally they are very low. IQ is very low, so they become abnormal, right? So they cannot be considered as a normal human being in society. So the mental health is more important than your physical health as the psychological perspective, your behavioral perspective. And then further WHO define health. What is health? I tell you mental health can be a psychological well-being, right? But what do you mean by health? So WHO has defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of a disease or infirmity, right? So the mental health does not mean that physically I am okay. It does not mean that mentally I am okay. Does not mean socially I am okay or I am completely well-being. So that means the mental health is depending on various components. It can be psychological, it can be physical, it can be social, it can be cognitive, it can be emotional. So the WHO said that health is a state of complete, you just try to understand about complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely a absence of disease or infirmity. So this is the complete meaning of your health. So mental health deals with one psychological and emotional well-being, the ability of an individual to lead an independent life, maintain satisfying relationship, to handle issues day-to-day life, stress, find a way out of usual difficult situations while having a sense of competence and all indicators of good mental health. So these are the indicators of good mental health. That means that ability of an individual to lead independent life, maintain satisfying relationship, and handle day-to-day life hurdles or problems. Then we can call this is a complete mental health or good mental health. So we can define mental health. Now mental and behavioral disorder. Somebody call it emotional disorder, somebody call it mental disorder, somebody call it behavioral disorder. So a lot of meaning have been given. Somebody calls it abnormal behavior, right? Somebody call it disorders, right? Basically, mental and behavioral disorders are understood as clinically significant conditions characterized by alterations in thinking, that is called mood, and further you can elaborate it as an emotion or behavior associated with personal distress or impaired functioning. So this is called mental health, and a cutoff between normal, distress, and distress. So mental health, mental disorders, behavioral disorders, there is a very difficult situation, difficult parameters not available that which can fix up the line between the continuum of mental disorders, that is called normal and the abnormal. At the continuum of normality, on one side we are normal, another side we can be abnormal, and in between we are normal. So no can fix up the line that where is the line is to end from where we are starting to a normal life, or this line is to end where we start to the abnormal life, right? So this was difficult to put up the line between normal and the abnormal. Sometimes we are normal, sometimes we become abnormal. We are crossing the line. We are abnormal, and after for a while, and after that we can become normal. So that again we are crossing the line. We cannot fix up any line that this is normal and this line fits abnormal. We change according to this, according to social whatever you call it. So Clackley is the name of person, Cleckly, that is 1941, argued that psychopathy has both behavioral, and social, emotional in nature. Psychopathy, that is called behavioral disorder. This is a pathology. Pathology means that this is a disorder. But psychopathy, we added there that this is a psychological disorder, behavioral disorders. That means psychopathy was both behavioral and emotional in nature. Behavior and social emotional in nature. That means we cannot depart behavior from our society because society is the rooted, society is the root to develop our behavior, right? When a child born, he or she is like a white paper. This is the society we start to write on that white paper. And the child never reads because the child is underdeveloped. He or she don't know what the society is writing. That is called nurturing, right? So societal component we cannot be keep it apart from your psychological emotional component of your psychopathy. So psychopath and sociopath. There are two concepts: sociopath and psychopath. Sociopath, the person who is having antisocial call them as a sociopath. That is a sociopathy. That is socially we people are deteriorated. It's called sociopathy or a sociopath. Any sociopath can be a social personality disorder. And psychopaths are born. Psychopaths are born and sociopaths are made. So I am to making one clear cut difference between mental retardation and mental illness. Though these two concepts are very separate, mental retardation and the mental illness, we have to understand that mental retardation is an inborn process, whereas mental illness is an acquired. After birth, nobody can be mentally by birth. A or she can be mentally retarded by birth, but when we become mentally ill, it is to be decided by society. We have after the birth. That is abnormal behavior. So the psychopath and sociopath. Psychopaths are born, right? And the sociopath, they are made. So sociopath by lack of socialization, disorientation towards society, lack of social orientation, lack of social emotional learning, and lack of socialization, inadequate socialization, further leads to the sociopath. A person with no conscience, जिसकी अंतरात्मा नहीं होती है, right? A person with no conscience, yes, by definition, he or she may have lack of remorse. उसको किसी चीज का दुख नहीं होता, वो किसी का कत्ल भी कर देता है तो उसको दुख नहीं होगा इस चीज का. He never remorse, right? That means telling that a person, but may or not, but many or not, violent person. All people in society cannot be violent. Some may or some may not. That means that is lack of socialization, lack of social orientation make you more violent. Or inadequate socialization make you more violent there, right? And then third is a killer. Most are not, but some are killers. Majority of people are not killers, but some of the people are killers. So all these three components, a person with no conscience, that means lacking remorse, a person can be violent, some are violent, but not all. A person can be a killer, most are not, but some can be killers. So all these three categories, lacking remorse, killer, and the violent, these are we learn through our social interaction, societal learning, or our imitation, or our modeling, or our observational learning. So these are not your inborn capacity, right? So as described earlier, mental health refers to an individual emotional and psychological well-being. Emotional psychological well-being. This is the component of your mental health. It can be defined as a state of emotional and psychological well-being in which an individual is able to use his or her cognitive and emotional capabilities to function in society and meet the ordinary demand of everyday life. So, mental health, that means The person who is meeting all the social demands, day-to-day social life demands, and having a cognitive and emotional capability to function in society. Because we the social animal, we born in society. When we born, we're dependent, and being dependent, the society give a nursery, grooming, and automatically we build love. So being independent, we learn everything from the society and we become a social animal. Being a social animal, through social learning, we imbibe, we learn, we further inculcate many social learning to our followers and we imbibe many social learning to our seniors, right? Or parenting or working as a group or societal learning, whatever you can call it, right? So it can also be defined as a state of successful performance of mental functions in terms of thought, mood, and behavior. Basically, if I summarize mental health, mental disorder, psychological problem, psychological disorder, emotional problem, social emotional problem, whatever, if I summarize in three words only, that is cognitive, cognitive, and affective. These are the three components, these are the three factors which play a vital role, important role in our social learning, social behavior, social orientation, and socialization. Cognitive, cognitive, and affective. हिंदी में इसको हम बोलते हैं ज्ञानात्मक, भावात्मक और क्रियात्मक. Now you can understand the meaning of ज्ञानात्मक, भावात्मक, and क्रियात्मक. Cognitive, भावात्मक, that is your feeling, and क्रियात्मक, that is your action, that is your behavior. A comprehensive conceptualization of mental health would mean comprehensive conceptualization of a mental health. That means a person's state of well-being in which the individual realize, number one, realize his or her own ability. Whosoever is a mentally healthy person, he or she will definitely realize his or her ability. Only a normal person realizes his or her ability, right? So this is the indicator of mental health, sound mental health, proper mental health, adequate mental health, right? And the person who is incapable to realize his abilities or her abilities, that person will not have a sound, proper, or adequate mental health. Second one is can cope up with the normal stresses of life. Every human being facing a normal stress of life in day-to-day behavior. Whosoever is coping the normal stress of life is we can call a mentally healthy person. Normal mental health he or she is having. And a person who is unable to cope up with the normal routine stress of life may not having a adequate, proper, or the normal mental health. They may have a poor mental health. The third one can work productively and fruitfully. That means the person whosoever having adequate mental health, normal mental health, will be productive and will work fruitfully, result oriented, task oriented. And contrary to this, which person at low level of mental health may do non-productive and less fruitful activities in the daily life. The next one is whosoever is able to make a contribution to the community will be considered as a mentally healthy person. Only a normal individual, normal mental health individual can contribute for the welfare of the society or community, then he or she can be considered as a normal human being or mentally healthy human being. And whosoever is unable to contribute to society may not be considered as a normal human being or mentally healthy human being. Right? So mental health. It is a state of balance between the individual and the surrounding world. Mental health, adaptation, adaptability. Right? If we are mentally healthy, we'll be very much adaptable. If we are mentally poor, we'll be lacking adaptability. So the mental health is having a balance between the individual and the surrounding. That means the situations and the individual. Situations is probing to aggravate your behavior. If you have a proper mental health, you make the balance. Will not be aggravated there. If situations are probing you to be happy, more happy, excited, then you have to analyze what the situation and accordingly you have to adapt there. So this is helping you to retain peace and your surroundings. A state of harmony between oneself and others. Second component of mental health, it helps you to retain harmonious relations between other people. If you're mentally healthy, you consider other people. That means your relations with social relations with society will be totally intact, proper, or normal if you are mentally healthy. Coexistence between
डॉक्टर साहब एक मिनट के लिए
realities
रोकना
of
चाहूंगा
mental
मैं डॉक्टर साहब एक मिनट के लिए रोकना
health.
चाहूंगा
Okay.
हाँ कोई स्टूडेंट बता सकता है कि आवाज क्लियर आ रही है या कुछ प्रॉब्लम महसूस कर रहे हैं एनी लर्नर
सर क्लियर आ रही है आवाज
क्लियर आ रही है ना
हाँ जी क्लियर आ रही है डॉक्टर तेजपाल जी
बस ठीक है मुझे ये टेस्टिंग करनी थी प्लीज 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 डॉक्टर साहब कंटिन्यू प्लीज
Thank you.
सभी अपने
Okay.
माइक म्यूट कर लेंगे
So,
प्लीज
for mental health, that means the person who is totally adaptable with his surroundings and a state of harmony between oneself and the others. Next indicator of mental health, distance between the realities of the self and that of others. What realities we are having, right? We have to accept, and it does not that if we are not accepting the realities, that indicating here little bit abnormality, poor mental health. So by definition of mental health, Carl Menninger is the name of person. K-A-R-L, Carl, M-E-N-N-I-N-G-E-R, Carl Menninger, 1947, defined mental health as an adjustment of human being. You note down the adjustment, that is adaptability of human being. I already explained the adjustment of human being to the world, that means society, to each other, with the maximum effectiveness and happiness. So this is the definition of your mental health. That means if we are adaptable, if we are adjustable to the world, to society, to each other, mutually, with the maximum effectiveness and happiness, right? So if our adaptability adjustment very effective, so automatically we are totally normal. So there is another definition of APA, that is American Psychological Association, which defined mental health in 1980. And they said simultaneous success at working. Keep in mind, only mentally healthy people will work properly. So this is the definition. Simultaneously success at working, loving and creating with capacity of nature, and flexible resolution of conflict between instincts, conscience, important other people, and reality. So the capacity of flexible resolution, we should not be so strict. We should be flexible, and we are to be capable to resolve. If we are handling the resolution or resolving the situations, that means we are a normal individual. So what are the criteria of mental health? Adequate contact with reality is the first criteria of your mental health. Second is control of thoughts and imagination. If we are having a thought control and imagination is in control, then we can be considered a normal individual. The next one, efficiency in work and play. That is efficient day-to-day activities, indicating next criteria, indicator, or parameters of your mental health. The next, social acceptance. Does not mean you are society to accept you, but you are to accept the society also. That is a reciprocity. That is a reciprocal relation between you and your society. You have to accept the society, and society is to accept you. If there is any inter or intra conflict, then obviously you're not a mentally healthy person. Right? Social acceptance is a big concept, big component, and which contribute a lot to your mental health. And social concept does not mean your society. Social acceptance can be within your peer group, within your relations, and within your surroundings. That is called socially accepted people. Then positive self-concept. That is called positive thinking. Positive self-concept, that is called positive thinking. Right? One must be positive about self. When we are positive about self, so automatically our vibrations go so positive that everything look positive, and that gives a soothing feeling to enhance your mental health. The next is healthy emotional life. emotional control, emotional balance, and further healthy emotional life. That means you are the masters to ventilate your emotions adequately. Only then your mental health can be intact. When you are the masters to ventilate your emotions properly, adequately, socially accepted way, then you are the masters of your mental health. Then next, further indicator of your mental health, a positive attitude towards self, right? Growth, development, and the ability of self-actualization. Self-actualization, to accept the reality about the self. Further integrate in further indicators of your mental health, that is called autonomy, and that is called perception of reality, and that is called your environmental mastery. You have to master the environment. You have to perceive the reality, and you have to be autonomous. Autonomous, you have to control your thought, you have to control your feeling, you have to control your emotions. That is called autonomous. A child is not be autonomous because he or she is to given the directions to do the proper behavior, because he is not socially learned individual. Social orientation is lacking in child. Being the adult, you are socially oriented, socially learned, socially intelligent people. So automatically you need the autonomy there. And being autonomous, you have to accept the reality and master the environment. You are the masters of your environment. Environment does not mean rain. Environment does not mean tufan and andhi and barish. No. Environment, that means your surroundings, your situation. You have to control, you have to maintain, you have to manage your environment. That is called environmental mastery. Right. So the history of abnormal psychological behavior, mental disorders, emotional disorders, behavioral disorders. There is a little history I'm just sharing with you, that how it has been started. If we go back in our past history, initially this mental disorders has been considered as an inborn, right, by birth. And the people who are mentally retarded, mentally handicapped, or mentally ill, they have to be kept away like animals. They are not part of normal society or normal family, right? They are considered that this is the sin of your past life. These are the results of your past life. You committed any sin, any wrong activities during past life. They got punished due to that, and you become abnormal. This was the past, long back, or the previous thinking, connotations, concepts about the abnormality. But due to evolution of science, the concepts changed. And around 1800, neurology as a discipline recognized hysteria could not be a biological disorder. 1800, initially hysteria, Rudolf Volpe was the person who is the co-worker of this Sigmund Freud, right? He was working on hysteria. And initially, hysterical disorders was considered as biological based. But in 1800, and initially it was considered that this disorder is only for female, not for male, right? But in World War II and World War First and World War II, lot of hysterical patients were noticed there. And after the World War One and World War II, they diagnosed, they treated, and they further considered, and their psychopathology revealed that this hysteria has been converted, has been immersed into their behavioral disorders due to the fear of war. So that means in 1800, so neurologists has denied, declined that this is hysteria is not only biological based. Early clinical psychologist was almost entirely an assessment field, that is called Kraepelin. Kraepelin is a person who was the first one who started to work on this area of interest, that psychological disorders, mental disorders are not inborn, they're not biologically based. Biological cause to mental illness is not considered as one cause of abnormal behavior. Then classification of syndrome. Now I am to explain the difference between symptoms and the syndrome. These are the two concepts, symptoms and the syndromes. You must check it on your Google there after my lecture. But I'm telling you, syndrome is a cluster of symptoms, right? Hopefully you understand. Cluster. This is a group of symptoms, right? When lot of symptoms merge together, then it's called a cluster of symptoms. Then this is called your syndrome. So this classification of syndromes, much of his work found basis for DSM and ICD. That Kraepelin working about the syndrome of abnormal behavior, mental behavior, or mental disorders was become the base of DSM and ICD. What is DSM? DSM given by American Psychological Association, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health, Mental Disorder. This is called DSM. And on the basis of DSM, we classify mental disorders, जो हम आगे पढ़ेंगे अभी mental classification के बारे में अलग टॉपिक आपका. So then ICD is given by WHO, World Health Organization. This ICD also helps you to classify the psychological disorders or the physical, which we study for the classification. There are two parameters of classification psychological disorders only. Number one DSM, another one is ICD. So DSM is maintained by APA, American Psychological Association, and ICD is maintained by WHO. Right. Several changes in psychological assessment have recently taken place. Clinical utility, that means clinical utility, that means whether the diagnosis or clinical diagnosis or clinical assessment helps for the treatment of mental disorders. Then further service evaluation, whether the treatment will work for psychological disorders or not. So many people, many laymen usually denied psychological counseling, psychological treatment, that this is a talk therapy. You have to talk. You're not giving any medicine. But whether this in reality it works or not, it will work or not, but definitely it will work. Because you take the example of Mahabharata, Gita Upadesh, Arjuna surrendered and he denied to fight. Krishna motivates him through counseling. That is the first counseling in the world. Right? And he motivated and he started to fight. So that means definitely the counseling remains effective. So that whether the classification of the psychological disorders, mentioning there is a treatment for psychological disorder, whether treatment remain effective or not, yes, it remains effective. And a little bit beyond your topic of mental health, I am telling you just for your general knowledge in psychology, that first of all about clinical psychology, because in your MA2 you have to take your clinical, sorry, when you study MS psychology, for example, there is clinical social, a lot of varieties are there. Whitener-Littner is the name of person. Whitener, WHITNER, Whitener जो फ्लूइड यूज करते हैं, मार जो गलत लिखा जाता है उसको ठीक करने के लिए. Whitener is a name, and Littner, L-I-T-N-E-R, Littner. Whitener-Littner is the name of the person who used the term clinical psychology first of all. Why we study mental health? Right? Because mental health is a major component of your daily life, of your behavioral path. If you are economically sound, physically sound, but mentally not sound, so you'll not be considered as a normal human being in society. So mental health, to study mental health is one of the biggest important area in every sphere of life. And in 2013, Government of India has notification that with the help of with mental health has been considered as par with your physical health. Initially, there were no clinical hospitals for a psychological disorder. Rarely there were anyone, right? So the Government of India in 2013 has implemented this Act of Mental Health Act and made it compulsory that mental health is an integral part of physical health also. But apart from this, I would like to share in America, there is in India we have medical leave, for example. If I'm not feeling physically okay, I can apply medical leave. But if I'm not feeling psychologically okay, India we don't have any medical leave for psychological not okay. But in America, there are two components, both physically you're not okay, you can go for medical leave. Psychologically you're not okay, you go for medical leave. So there, psychological, physical, both they are considered as equal part of your health, right? So mental health is very important to be studied. So the model of mental health. What are the models of mental health? Number one, biological model. That is mental health as a biological unit, defined in terms of biological determination, determinant, and attribute. You know, comorbid, we people are using the word of comorbid. Comorbid means when we have a one disorder, right? Suppose I am not physically okay, and my physical not okay can affect my mental level. Number one. Number two, if I am not okay, my mood is not okay, right? I'm down. Automatically, my mental state will affect my physical capacity. So both they are internally dependent. That is called comorbid. When lot of symptoms merge there, comorbid. One disorder is there, another generated there. Another is also joined a previous disorder there. This is called comorbid. That means I am having anxiety. Right? Initially, I am having stress, anxiety, then hopelessness, and depression. All comes together. That is called comorbid. So this is a biological model. Biological model explaining that mental health or the mental disorders or mental health can be determined as an attribute of a biological component. Because biology, that is physical component, physical, social, emotional, or behavioral, they are inseparable components. In absence of anyone, we cannot be considered as normal human beings. So all they are inseparable. They are to be considered properly. So from an ecological perspective, ecological model, we can see what health has a dynamic function of one heredity and the current and accumulated effect of one material and non-material environment. That is ecological. That is nature and nurture. Nature and nurture. Biology, I told you. Ecology, I am telling you nature and nurture concept. Nature give you birth, nurture will develop. What types of nurturing, grooming going on? Automatically, your mental health will be there. And why biological is important? Because आप लोग सुनते होंगे कभी स्वस्थ शरीर में स्वस्थ दिमाग रहता है, सुना हो, healthy body having healthy mind. So that biological component is more important than your for your mental health, right? So if you are physically well-being, physically sound, automatically mental soundness, well-being will be automatically there. So mental health has a capacity to adjust to culture norms, cultural norms. This is another component to explain mental health. If we are adjusting to the cultural norms, every society, what is the culture? Cultural norms, I am repeating again and again. You must know the meaning of culture. Culture is a ritual, culture is a norm, culture is tradition, culture is a custom. Every society has rituals, norms, custom, and tradition, and all these are become the part of culture. Every state having a different culture, right? So according to the culture, if we people are adjusting there, so we have to be considered a normally cultured human being into that particular culture, right? So then, being a social animal, we lead our life in company of other people. We are animals. We are need the company of other people. Automatically, we learn from other people and we teach other people from my side out. Because both society and me are entirely interdependent. So we are learning. And many times you heard that when we are in a group, we lost our identity. Right? When you are to be recognized as an identity of the group. You take the example of BJP. BJP is a group and Modi. Now BJP is considered as a Modi, Modi is considered as BJP because Modi lost the identity as a Modi when he is in BJP. He's in a group. Right? So when we people are in a group, so automatically we have to interact according to the norms of the group, cultural norms of the group or the society, and then we have to be considered as a normal human being. If we have the capacity, right? And then the fourth one, mental health as a subjective state. This is a subjective one. Mental health. Something may be acceptable me in the society, may not acceptable to you in the society. Right? You have seen one situation in society, you become more irritated, and similarly, I am in the same situation, may not be more irritated as you. Right? This is a very subjective component. So mental health is a subjective one. One situation can irritate you, and the same situation may not irritate me, because this depends on your orientation, this depends on your socialization, right? So it does not mean all human beings are to be reacting in the same situation in the same manner. So the mental health is your subjective one, and your life satisfaction, that is your subjectivity. Life satisfaction is a very subjective one. If you're satisfied with your life, automatically mental health is very poor. Sorry, very high. If you're not satisfied, your mental health is very poor. And this is very subjective. My life, I'm satisfied or not. I have to think, I have to decide, I have to define, I have to fix up the parameters where I'm satisfied, where I'm not satisfied. Right? This is subjective. And mental health is social emotional intelligence. Mental health socially connected, emotionally sound, only then my mental health will remain intact. Mental health cannot be remain intact in your vacuum, in your isolation. We cannot survive in isolation, right? As a social animal, we need social learning. As an emotional human being, we are to need emotional connectivity, right? So IQ and EQ, IQ and EQ. IQ is your academic achievement, and EQ is your emotional capability, emotional capacity. Nowadays, IQ score you have 100% of IQ score may not give you a guarantee of success in your life, because any university ever never give you any guarantee being a topper of university to be a successful life in your future. Right? You are the topper, high IQ level, so you top the universities, but any universities will never give you any guarantee as a topper that you being a topper, you being a high IQ, can be a successful individual in society in your future life. But contrary to this, if you have a high level of IQ, anyone IQ, high level of EQ, that is emotional quotient, and IQ is intelligence quotient. If you have a high EQ, anyone give you a guarantee of your successful life in the future. So emotional balancing, EQ is helps you to maintain the emotional balance. And when I am competent to retain my emotional balancing, so obviously I am to be considered a mentally healthy person. Mental health as a resilience. One must be resilient, right? Or resilience that immediate environment does not fully determine the properties of the organization. That is, that organization that is a fact, the part of self-determination of self-organization. That self-organization, we have to self-organize. And next one is two-dimensional model of mental health. Two-dimensional model of the two-dimensional model of mental health is number one, construct of personal well-being and the social adaptation. These are the two dimensions of mental health. Personal well-being, that is a subjectivity, subjective component, and the social adaptation, that is called your environment, that is called your culture. You are to be deciding that as your personal well-being, how much you are acceptable by the society, as a cultural social animal, how much you are accepted by particular society. So both these are the models will decide your mental health. Personal well-being may be related to you, yourself, your experience, your feeling, your emotions, along the continuum of satisfaction versus dissatisfaction. Satisfaction versus dissatisfaction. This is a continuum. One side there is satisfaction, another side there is a dissatisfaction. You have to lie either side or in between. Accordingly, you have to think about yourself, how much you are mentally healthy. Right. Then there is we have uh, simply if you can say mental disorders, it is all about the indicators, criteria, components, concepts of mental health. Now we are moving towards your mental disorders. Mental disorders is a commonly used term in the field of mental health, something that is dysfunctional or unhealthy. The things which is not functional properly, that is called dysfunctional, that is called mental disorder. Mental disorders, that is the things which is not in order, that is called disorder, right? So mentally, when we are not in order, so we become mentally disordered. And normal and the abnormal. So we have to think mentally healthy people. We have to better first understand the normal people. If we are understanding what is normal, only then we can be able to think this is abnormality. We have to make the difference between normality and the abnormality. So to understand abnormality, first we have to understand the normality of the human being. Only then we can fix up that this is the abnormality. Until we cannot be having a knowledge about the normality, we cannot understand the abnormality, right? Because one starts after another. I'm an abnormal one, I can be abnormal, right? If I'm an abnormal one, I can be normal, right? Because daily life activities can give a change, can give a shift from one to another. So simply if I say that mental disorders called could be seen as disorders of the action, that is cognitive, that is cognition, and affect. So already I told you three components. Mental disorders could be the outcome of your cognitive and the affective functioning of your daily life, right? If you are cognitively well, connectively well, and affectively well, there will be no mental disorder, right? Psychological disorder, that means the deviation, distortion, and disorder. Deviation, distortion, and disorder. So automatically, when you deviate from the normal track of life, you will be fearful. When there is a dysfunction, then you will be abnormal. You will be mental disorder. So simply, this is called a disability, right? In psychology, for your knowledge, I'm telling you, if any person is suffering from schizophrenia, he or she will get only disability certificate only. If anyone suffering from anxiety, depression, stress, frustration, aggression, whatever, accept schizophrenia, there's not any single psychological disorders or mental disorders, behavioral disorders, abnormality, psychological abnormality, which can give you a certificate of abnormality. That is a certificate of disability, right? So anyway, automatically when the impaired life, deviated life, dysfunctional life, impaired, distorted thoughts, distortion, automatically all these are signifying your mental disorder, psychological disorders, or behavioral disorders, because distortion, dysfunctional, impairment, this impairment automatically they signify the increased risk of abnormality, increased risk of mental disorder, right? So this is another type of your cognitive disability or the behavioral disability or psychology. The definitions of mental disability, the presence of clinically significant behavioral psychological symptoms in the patient. There must be consistent symptoms of abnormal behavior, impairment, distortion, deviation, mental retardation, mental disorders, whatever we can call. If these are consistently happening, it does not mean today I am angry, today I am anxiety, today I am depressed, and tomorrow I can be okay. So I'm not abnormal, I don't have a mental disorder because it's situational only. When it become a consistent part of my daily life, I'm telling you consistency, frequency, right, and duration. Consistency, frequency, and duration. If these three are there, consistency means continuously. Duration means permanent in my daily life, right? Consistency, frequency. How many times in a day? लगातार आता है, बार बार आता है, एक बार आती है एंजाइटी, दो बार आती है, सारा दिन रहती है, रिपीट होती है, क्या होती है, को आक्रस होती है, क्या होती है. So all these things are responsible factors to decide your abnormal, right? If it is consistent, a frequency is okay, good frequency, frequently happening, and it is repeatedly there. So there is a medical model. What is we can call what is mental disorders, what is mental behavior, what is psychological disorders, what is emotional disorders, what is lot of deviated behavior, whatever you call, is deviant behavior, maladaptive behavior, causing personal distress, and continuum of normal or abnormal. All these are further explained you as mental disorder. If my behavior is deviated, that is called deviant, right? If I am maladaptive, that is lacking the adaptation, maladaptive, not proper, inadequate adaptability, causing personal distress, right? I am feeling distress at my personal level due to surroundings. All these factors further explain your abnormality, mental disorders, or behavioral disorders, psychological disorders, mental illness, whatever you call. So continuum of abnormality and normality, you know better. So the classification or classical examples of the mental disorders can be given on the basis of various studies, and our studies have been focused on lot of concepts. That means classifications on the basis of DSM, classifications on the basis of IC. 1951, DSM-1, DSM-2, DSM-3, DSM-4, and DSM-5 is going on, right? And ICD-10 is going on, right? So the recent DSM-5 is going on, but your study material available is not updated as per DSM-5. Still, your study material is having a DSM-4. So you people are to study DSM-4 classification according to DSM-4 because your study material, your books are having a DSM-4 based. So please make it sure when you study, you must study DSM-4 classification of abnormal behavior. But little bit additions you can make as per your 5 also, but you must keep in mind DSM-4 is to be studied there as per your book, as per your notes available. So the classification of your mental disorders, that means all symptoms of mental disorders and diagnosis begin from the work of Kraepelin. Kraepelin studies, Kraepelin findings, Kraepelin research has the base of all classification of mental disorders. He claimed, he said, certain group of symptoms occur together usually, thus allowing us to call them distress or syndrome. This is the word given by Kraepelin, Kraepelin, Kraepelin. Certain groups of symptoms, that is called syndrome. Certain group of symptoms occur together often. Often means consistently. Together, that means there is not a single factor responsible for your mental disorder. Not any single factor responsible for your mental disorder. Right? Multiple factors are responsible for your mental disorder. Right? So that is a group that is together. And thus allowing us distress or syndrome. He regarded each mental illness as distinct from all others, with its own origin, symptoms, causes, and outcomes. So each mental disorder, psychological disorders are distinct, different from all other psychological disorders due to its root of origin, right? But apart from this, I would like to add at my level, at my own level, that each Kraepelin said each psychological disorders are distinct, different, but on the basis of origin, on the basis of root of origin. But I am adding there that anxiety is the mother of all psychological disorders. Kraepelin said the root of origin of psychological disorder is different. But I am telling you the root of all psychological disorder is anxiety because the anxiety is the mother of all psychology. This is my addition there, right? As my own experiences of studies available, I have concluded that anxiety is the mother of all psychological disorders. Right. So he originally classified two major groups: dementia pericox. Initially, dementia pericox was name given to an abnormal behavior. Later on, it has been called as schizophrenia. And I request you all, you must learn the meaning of schizophrenia, spelling of schizophrenia. You must learn because many people can ask you as a student of PGDCFT or MSCCFT, they can ask you in any interview about the spelling of schizophrenia. It's a little difficult, right? So all you must note down schizophrenia spelling SCHIZOPHRENIA. May I repeat? SCHIZOPHRENIA. So dementia pericox is the initial name of mental disorders, which further has been described as schizophrenia. Manic depressive disorders, that is called faulty metabolism. Every human being is having its own metabolic capacities of individual, right? So manic depressive, many hormones work like a cortisol hormone. Cortisol hormone helps you to face any level of stress. If you poor cortisol level, a small stress can make you abnormal. If a good level of cortisol, good amount of stress cannot make you abnormal, right? So the manic depressive, what's the psychosis that is based on the faulty metabolism. This helped to establish the organic nature of mental disorders and form the basis of the diagnostic statistical manual of mental disorders. The Kraepelin work has given the base of DSM. So the DSM is entirely based on the work, findings, research, outcome of Kraepelin. This helped to establish the organic nature of mental disorders, right? It is DSM. Then we have ICD, the International Classification of Disease. This is the meaning of ICD. Or ICD we can call injury, cause, death. Another meaning, injuries, cause, death. Injuries can be physical, injuries can be psychological, injuries can be social, injuries can be emotional. Injuries does not mean your psychological accident. Sorry, physical accident. You can be injured psychologically, socially, emotionally, financially, politically, or physically. So ICD, that means International Classification of Disease. So it is maintained by WHO, and this classification is Mental Health Act 1983 based. Mental illness, personal disorders, and mental impairment is to be discussed in your ICD. So DSM-4 and ICD. Now I would like to add on one thing more in your DSM. DSM-4 and DSM-4 TR. TR means text revised. When we don't have an DSM-5, so until DSM-5 is to come, so APA has revised the DSM-4 and given DSM-4 text revised. That is called DSM-4 TR. So DSM-4 TR, larger number of discrete categories, and whereas ICD, a more general category. I'm comparing ICD and DSM, right? So the DSM-4 TR has a larger number of discrete categories of psychological disorders, whereas ICD is having a more general categories of psychological disorders. DSM-4 TR uses a multi-axial system. There are 5 axes, multi-axial. Axis 1, axis 2, axis 3, axis 4, and axis 5. Every axis is having group of psychological disorders. So various varieties of psychological disorders are clubbed together in one axis. So there are 5 axes. So the DSM is a 5-axial studies of psychological disorders, whereas the ICD is generally a single axis psychological. DSM is having 5 axes, and the ICD is generally a single axial psychological disorders, but used broad etiology. ICD. Then next, this DSM-40 use term psychotic, whereas the ICD-10 use the term neurotic. This is comparison. DSM-40R inclusion of axis reflect the assumptions that most disorders caused by the interaction of biological, sociological, psychological factors. The patient is assessed more broadly, giving a more global, in-depth picture. That means the DSM-4, based on various component interactions, that is called biological, sociological, psychological factors, all they are interact to each other, and then further psychological disorders generate. So this is about your classifications. Of lot of classifications for the name by name classifications are there automatically. So now I am moving to your disability. There is another component of disability in your topic, in your paper. So the disability usually we call the disability is physically related, right? But it is not. The word of disability having a lot of evolution, lot of changes, lot of development. And the last tenure of Modi government, the disabled people has given a special name, Divyang, right? Physical handicap, disabled, then then physically able, specially able. I'm telling you the name of different time we used for disabled people. Initially we were using the handicap, then physical disabled, then specially able, and then finally Divyang. This is the development of disability. Disability is not physical only. Disability can be emotional, psychological, social, political, economical, every disabilities are there. Socially, I am a disabled. If I am introvert, I am socially disabled. I cannot interact with society, right? If I am emotionally upset, so I am a psychological disorder. I cannot interact with society when I am emotionally upset, right? If I'm a physical upset, physically disordered, I don't have one hand. I cannot eat. I cannot write properly. I am a disabled, right? If I'm having one leg only. I cannot walk properly. I am physically disabled. So disability is the word that I'm not able in a particular area. Economically, if I'm a poor, I cannot enjoy my wealth of life. That is, I'm poor. I'm disabled economically. So many things are there. Disability does not mean to be considered as a physical ground only. So the physical development, the ability to move, see and hear. This is a physical development. So the five primary development area I'm explaining. If we are developing properly in all these five areas of development, we are to be considered normally developed human beings. If there is any lacking in our development in any of these five areas, we can be considered as a disabled, right? So the first area that is called physical development, that is the ability to move, see, and ability to see. So that is called physical development. So the next is cognitive development, the ability to think and learn. And the next is called speech and language development. And next is self-help. And the finally, social and emotional development. These are the five areas. If I am self-dependent, Modi concept self-reliance, recently given the self-reliance, Atmanirbhar, self-help. If I am helping myself, I am not disabled. If I am physically developed, I am not disabled. I am cognitively developed, I am not disabled. My speech and language proper, I am not disabled. My social emotional development proper, I am not disabled. So these are the five areas. In out of these five areas, if I am properly developed, I am a normal one. If I am not properly developed, I am abnormal. Right? So different name has been given, different components, and the person's disabilities are depending on lot of factors, right? That is called education, that is called your social learning, that is called your peer group, many things. So I think my time is over. Hello? Hello? Hello?
जी डॉक्टर साहब।
Yes, sir.
Time is over?
यस सर।
Okay.
डॉक्टर नूरुल, आप हैं, उपलब्ध हैं?
Yes, sir.
डॉक्टर नूरुल?
नहीं है।
ओके।
है डॉक्टर साहब,
डॉक्टर साहब, अपने
बोलिए।
आप भी अपने आशीष शब्दों से लाभान्वित करें बच्चों को।
सलाम सर।
नहीं, वो तो कर दिया है। गुड आफ्टरनून सर।
गुड आफ्टरनून सर, आप
मैं
लोग हैं।
मैं कह रहा था आज तो कुछ लोग ज्यादा हुए हैं, तो वेलकम टू। Yes, yes. So anybody can also ask about the project or practical, whatever they want to know. And this will continue for tomorrow also at the same time with the same link. So do attend tomorrow
Yes.
also this online counseling for MSc CFT students and PGDCFT. Anyone
Sir?
can ask the questions
Yes,
if
sir.
if
I
he
have a
or she.
question.
Yes.
Sir, I have also some.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, please carry on. Carry on.
लवी साहब की आवाज
So
सही
my
नहीं आई, दोबारा बोलिए।
question.
बोलिए बोलिए।
Okay, should I speak first?
यस।
So my question is कि I have completed first two practicals of MCFT1, but I just want to make sure that I've done them like properly. So who should I like consult it with?
डॉक्टर साहब
Me.
प्लीज।
Me means Dr. Roshan Lal.
Yes. Sir, good afternoon. Thanks a lot.
रश्मि जी, आपकी बात नहीं आ रही। रश्मि जी,
Sir, please.
your voice is breaking.
Sir, hello. Sir,
Your voice is breaking.
रश्मि जी आपकी आवाज सही तरीके से नहीं आ रही है, कुछ नेट की प्रॉब्लम होगी आपके यहाँ पे।
sir, not clear, sir. Hello.
Not clear. Another one. Grace Daniel.
Sir, I've sent a message to you. Can you just check that?
I told you can consult me.
Okay. Okay. All right. So should I send you those practicals to your WhatsApp?
No. No. You are telling two practical CFT. One, who should I consult with to confirm if I have done the practical right now?
I am done with the practicals, first two practicals of MCFT1. I just want to make sure that if I've done them like the right way.
You have the practical booklet with you.
Yes, sir.
I request you all, you go by the parameters, layout, according to the booklet with you about the practical. That will be the best way, because during this time, we cannot meet personally, we cannot meet in person. So better you buy the guidelines given in your booklet and write everything. That is the best way. You will send me to the email. That will be PDF. We cannot give any comment to PDF, right? We cannot suggest you a lot. If you send the Word file, then we can comment there. Don't have a Word file.
Okay, sir.
This is the problem. I suggest you all, you go by particularly about the guidelines mentioned in the practical booklet. That will be the perfectly best advice to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Happy?
I have. May I listen? May I know?
Breaking.
Sir,
रश्मि जी आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है रश्मि जी।
Hello, sir.
बोलिए।
Sir, good afternoon. Lily this side.
जी बोलिए लिली।
Sir, firstly, thank you. This was a very helpful class, very informative, and बहुत concepts clear हुए. So thank you so much for the class. Sir, एक request है
Thank you.
कि जिस तरह से ये theory classes हो रहे हैं, इसी तरह से एक छोटा session practical files की completion पर या synopsis के completion
तो
पर
इसके
भी हो
बाद
सके.
इसके बाद
All right, sir.
पहले
Sure, sir. So that would be very helpful for all of us.
ओके, आप लोग की सभी की
लिली
जानकारी
जी
के
बताइए।
डॉक्टर साहब प्लीज बोलिए बोलिए।
लिली जी,
जी sir.
हेलो।
Yes sir, I can hear
No,
you.
you
Am I audible?
are fast. Yeah, Lily ji, I'm telling. I know you are moving fast.
Sir,
Hello.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
No, you're going fast. So please slow down a little bit.
All right, sir.
Definitely we'll do practicals, but first we go for theory, then practical.
Right, sir. Sir, what would be the
Okay.
topic for tomorrow's class?
We are second way. Tomorrow we'll discuss third paper.
All right, sir. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
आप लोग सभी विद्यार्थियों से मेरा एक आग्रह रहेगा, यही आपकी क्लासें नहीं है, इसके बाद भी आपकी अलग अलग विषयों के ऊपर क्लासें रहेंगी, तो आप फेसबुक पेज के संपर्क में भी रहेंगे, मेल भेजेंगे, देखते रहेंगे। ठीक है, ये आपकी जानकारी के लिए। ठीक है डॉक्टर साहब, थैंक यू।
ओके सर। सर
थैंक यू एवरी
सर लिली है क्या?